You keep attracting the same person in different bodies. Different name, different face, same painful pattern. You wonder if you're cursed, if love just isn't meant for you, or if something deeper is blocking your path to real connection. Archangel Michael says there's a reason this keeps happening, and it's not what you think. Listen closely, because what you're about to discover will completely shift how you see relationships, soulmates, and why your manifestations keep bringing the wrong person to your door. Most people believe they're calling in their soulmate when they visualize love. They picture the perfect partner, feel the feelings, repeat the affirmations. Then someone shows up who seems right at first. The chemistry feels electric. The connection feels deep. You think this is finally it. 3 months later, you're staring at the same red flags you saw in your last relationship. The emotional unavailability, the hot and cold behavior, the way they pull away right when things get real. You're confused because you were so specific about what you wanted. You did everything right. Here's what Archangel Michael wants you to understand. You weren't manifesting a soulmate. You were manifesting a mirror. Every person who shows up in your life reflects something unresolved within you, not as punishment, as invitation. The universe isn't being cruel when it sends you the same pattern again. It's being precise. You can't heal what you won't see, and you can't see what doesn't show up right in front of you wearing a human face. Think about the last 3 people you were drawn to. Really think about them. Beneath the surface differences, what was the core pattern? Did they make you chase? Did they need fixing? Did they promise depth but deliver distance? That pattern isn't random. It's a signature frequency you're broadcasting without realizing it. Archangel Michael showed me something that changed everything I thought I knew about attraction. When you carry unhealed wounds from childhood, past relationships, or ancestral patterns, those wounds create energetic imprints. These imprints act like homing beacons. They don't attract what you want. They attract what matches your unresolved frequency. You might consciously want a partner who's emotionally available, communicative, and consistent. But if deep down you believe you're not worthy of that, or if part of you feels safer with distance than intimacy, your energetic frequency will override your conscious desires every single time. This is why affirmations alone don't work. You can say, "I am worthy of love," 1,000 times, but if your nervous system associates real intimacy with danger, your body will sabotage every healthy connection that comes close. Your subconscious isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you based on old information. Maybe love meant abandonment when you were 7. Maybe closeness meant losing yourself when you were 22. Your system remembers, and it will keep recreating scenarios that feel familiar, even when familiar means painful, because familiar feels safer than unknown. Archangel Michael says the pattern will repeat until you interrupt it at the root level, not by trying harder to manifest differently, by healing what's causing you to broadcast that specific frequency in the first place. Most people skip this part. They want to jump straight to calling in the one. They want the technique, the ritual, the prayer that finally brings their person. But you can't skip the foundation work without building on unstable ground. The wrong person will keep showing up because you're still the same person calling them in. Here's where it gets interesting. The pattern you keep experiencing isn't just about romantic relationships. Look at your friendships, your work dynamics, the way people treat you across all areas of life. Do you notice themes? Do certain types of people consistently disappoint you, overlook you, or take advantage of your generosity? That's not coincidence. That's your core wound expressing itself through every relationship channel available. Until you address the source, switching from romantic relationships to friendships to work connections won't change anything. The faces change. The pattern stays. Archangel Michael wants you to get really honest right now. What would it mean if you actually received the love you say you want? Not surface level. Go deeper. Would it feel safe? Would you know how to receive it? Would you trust it? Or would you spend the whole relationship waiting for the other shoe to drop? If real, stable, healthy love showed up tomorrow, would part of you find it boring? Would you miss the intensity of the chase, the drama of the push-pull, the validation that comes from finally getting someone emotionally unavailable to choose you? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're necessary ones. Because if healthy love feels foreign to your nervous system, you'll unconsciously push it away or sabotage it when it arrives. Then you'll blame the universe for not sending your person when really your person came and you couldn't recognize them because they didn't match your wound pattern. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. Someone does all the spiritual work, clears their energy, raises their vibration. Then a genuinely good person shows up, kind, consistent, emotionally available. And within weeks, they're gone. Not because they left, because the person doing the manifesting found them too stable, too predictable, too easy. The chemistry wasn't there, they say. But chemistry isn't always what we think it is. Sometimes, what we call chemistry is actually our nervous system recognizing a familiar wound pattern and lighting up because it thinks it finally has a chance to resolve old pain. That's not real chemistry. That's trauma bonding, dressed up as destiny. Real chemistry with a healthy person might feel different than what you're used to. It might feel calmer, steadier, less like fireworks and more like coming home. If you've spent years equating intensity with love, that calmness might feel like something's missing when actually drama is what's missing. Chaos is what's missing. The constant anxiety of wondering where you stand is what's missing. Your system has to learn that safe can also be exciting, that consistent doesn't mean boring, that someone showing up reliably isn't a red flag, it's a green one. Archangel Michael says this is the work most people avoid because it requires looking at parts of themselves they'd rather not see. It's easier to blame the other person, to say they weren't the one, to keep searching for someone who finally gets it right. But what if the person who needs to get it right is you? What if the reason you keep meeting the same person is because you haven't yet become the version of yourself who's ready for something different? This isn't about self-blame. It's about self-awareness. You didn't create these patterns consciously. Most of them formed before you had language to describe what was happening. But now you're aware. Now you have a choice. You can keep running the same program expecting different results. Or you can pause and ask what this pattern is trying to show you. Every repeated pattern is a teacher. The lesson repeats until you learn it. Not as punishment, but as mercy. Because once you truly learn it, integrate it, heal it at the root, you become unavailable for that pattern. Your frequency shifts. And when your frequency shifts, who shows up shifts too. The person who used to trigger you won't even register on your radar anymore. You'll look at them and feel nothing. No pull, no curiosity, no temptation to try again. They'll be energetically neutral because you've healed the part of you that was magnetized to them. That's when you'll know the pattern is broken. Not because you're trying to avoid it or control it, but because you've genuinely outgrown it. You've become someone who naturally attracts different energy because you're operating from a different frequency. But here's what most people don't realize about breaking these patterns. Healing isn't linear. You don't just decide to change and suddenly everything shifts. There are layers. Each time you think you've healed it, another layer reveals itself. This isn't failure. This is how deep transformation works. Archangel Michael says the soulmate you're trying to manifest can't come until you've cleared enough layers that there's actually space for them. Right now, your energy field is crowded with unresolved patterns, unconscious beliefs, and protective mechanisms that keep real love at arm's length. The person you're calling in would have to push through all of that to reach you. Most won't. And the ones who do are usually the ones who match your wounds, not your wholeness. So what's the first step to actually breaking this cycle? You have to get brutally honest about what you've been unconsciously choosing and why. Not the story you tell yourself about what you want, the truth about what you keep selecting. Because whatever keeps showing up is what some part of you believes you deserve, can handle, or needs to finally heal something old. Look at your last relationship, the one that hurt the most. What did that person's behavior make you feel? Unworthy, invisible, not enough, too much? Go back further. When was the first time you felt that exact feeling? Childhood? Teenage years? That original wound is what's running the show. That's the frequency you're broadcasting. That's what the pattern is built on. Until you heal that original wound, you'll keep attracting people who make you feel the same way, hoping this time will be different, hoping this time you'll finally be chosen, finally be enough, finally prove your worth. But you can't heal an internal wound through external validation. It doesn't work that way. The pattern breaks when you stop trying to get love to fix what only you can heal. When you stop using relationships as evidence of your worth and start building that worth from within. When you become so solid in who you are that you're no longer available for breadcrumbs, inconsistency, or relationships that require you to shrink. Archangel Michael showed me something that completely shifted my perspective on this. The right person isn't coming to complete you. They're coming to meet you. There's a massive difference. If you're incomplete, you'll attract someone who's also incomplete, and you'll spend the whole relationship trying to fill each other's gaps. That's not a soulmate connection. That's codependency. Your soulmate is the person who shows up when you're already whole. Not perfect, not healed of everything, but whole enough that you're not looking for them to fix you, save you, or prove your worth. You're looking for them to walk beside you as an equal, to build something together from overflow, not lack. And here's what most people miss about that wholeness. It's not about being completely healed. It's not about having zero triggers or never feeling insecure. Wholeness means you know how to hold yourself through those moments without making them someone else's responsibility. You know the difference between sharing your process and making your partner responsible for your healing. That distinction changes everything. So how do you actually get there? How do you shift from attracting the same painful patterns to attracting something real? First, you have to stop romanticizing potential. This is huge. So many people fall in love with who someone could be, what the relationship might become, the version of this person they saw glimpses of. Meanwhile, they're tolerating behavior that directly contradicts everything they say they want. You're not crazy for seeing potential. You're probably right. That person probably could be amazing under different circumstances, with different healing, at a different time in their life. But that's not who's standing in front of you right now. And you can't build a real relationship with a fantasy. The pattern breaks when you start responding to what is, not what could be. When someone shows you inconsistency, believe them. When someone shows you they're not ready, believe them. When someone shows you they can't meet you where you are, believe them the first time. Stop giving people the benefit of the doubt when they haven't earned it. Stop making excuses for behavior you'd never accept from yourself. Your soulmate isn't going to be someone you have to convince to choose you. They're not going to be someone whose potential you have to excavate. They're going to be someone who shows up consistently, clearly, and without confusion. Someone whose actions match their words. Someone who's doing their own work and isn't looking for you to fix what's broken. But here's the part that's going to challenge you. Before that person can show up, you have to become unavailable for anything less. Not intellectually unavailable, actually unavailable. Most people say they want something real, but their actions tell a completely different story. They're still responding to breadcrumbs, still giving energy to situationships, still holding space for people who've repeatedly shown they're not ready. You have to close those doors, completely, not leave them cracked open just in case. Not stay friends hoping things will shift. Actually close them, because every ounce of energy you're giving to what isn't right is energy you're not available to give to what is. Archangel Michael says there's someone trying to reach you right now, But they can't get through because you're still energetically entangled with the wrong connections. Your field is cluttered. You're broadcasting mixed signals. Part of you wants something real, while another part is still hoping the person who wasn't ready suddenly will be. That split energy creates confusion in the quantum field. It tells the universe you're not actually ready either. The moment you fully release what isn't aligned, something shifts. Not because you're playing games or using detachment as a strategy, because you've genuinely moved on. You've reclaimed your energy, you've made space, and here's what happens in that space. You start to remember who you actually are. Not the version of yourself you became trying to make broken things work. Not the person who shrunk to fit into connections that were too small. The real you. The version that existed before you learned to abandon yourself for love. That version has been waiting, and the moment you come back to them, everything changes. Your standards shift. Not because you're trying to be difficult or picky. Because you genuinely can't tolerate what used to feel normal. The things you used to accept suddenly feel impossible. The behavior you use to rationalize becomes instantly recognizable as unacceptable. This is what people mean when they talk about doing the work. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming unavailable for what doesn't serve you. It's about building such a strong foundation within yourself that anything shaky becomes obvious immediately. You don't have to question whether someone's right for you. You feel it. Your body tells you. Your nervous system responds. When something's aligned, there's ease, not perfection, not the absence of challenges, but a fundamental ease in how you come together. You're not constantly anxious. You're not overanalyzing every text. You're not wondering where you stand. You know, because they're making it clear. That's what changes when you break the pattern. You stop accepting confusion as connection. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop letting someone's inability to show up consistently somehow become evidence that you're not enough. The right person doesn't make you feel like you're too much or not enough. They make you feel like you're exactly right. And they demonstrate that through consistent, aligned action. Not just words, not just potential, actual follow-through. But getting to that place requires you to face something most people avoid. You have to grieve the relationship you wanted with the people who couldn't give it to you. You have to stop waiting for them to change, wake up, or realize what they lost. You have to release the fantasy of who they could have been and accept the reality of who they were. This grief is necessary. It's the bridge between the pattern and your freedom. Most people skip it. They jump from one connection to the next, carrying all the unprocessed pain with them. Then they wonder why the same thing keeps happening with different people. The pattern doesn't break until you stop running from the pain of what didn't work, until you sit with it, feel it, let it move through you. Not to stay stuck in it, not to build an identity around it, but to actually process it so it stops running your subconscious choices. Because here's the truth. Whatever you don't heal, you repeat. Whatever you don't feel, you attract situations that force you to feel it. The universe isn't punishing you. It's trying to help you complete the cycle. Every painful relationship is showing you what still needs attention inside you. So what specifically needs to shift? Your relationship with yourself. That's the foundation everything else is built on. If you're constantly criticizing yourself, your partner will likely criticize you. If you're abandoning your needs to keep the peace, you'll attract people who expect you to abandon yourself. If you don't trust yourself, you'll attract untrustworthy people. Not because you're manifesting it intentionally, because your external reality reflects your internal landscape. The way you treat yourself becomes the baseline for how others treat you. This is why affirmations alone don't work. You can say you're worthy 1,000 times, but if you're simultaneously accepting behavior that contradicts that worth, your subconscious isn't buying it. Worthiness isn't built through words. It's built through action, through boundaries, through choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable, through walking away from what isn't right even when you're lonely. Every time you honor yourself, you're reinforcing a new pattern. Every time you choose differently, you're rewiring old programming. And here's something Archangel Michael wants you to understand. The loneliness you feel when you're alone is nothing compared to the loneliness of being with the wrong person. At least when you're alone, you're not betraying yourself. You're not contorting to fit. You're not giving your energy to something that's draining you. That loneliness is temporary. It's the space between chapters. The loneliness of being with someone who can't meet you, that's a different kind of pain, because you're lonely and you can't even honor it. You have to pretend everything's fine while slowly disappearing. Your soulmate can't find you there. They can't reach you when you're energetically unavailable because you're trying to force something that isn't working. They need you free. They need you clear. They need you to have gone through this fire and come out knowing exactly what you're no longer willing to tolerate. Because when you meet them, there can't be confusion. There can't be old connections you're still hoping might shift. There has to be absolute clarity that you're available, ready, and no longer interested in anything that isn't real. That clarity comes from pain, from disappointment, from finally hitting the point where you're more tired of the pattern than you are afraid of being alone. That's the breaking point. That's where transformation happens. When staying in what's familiar becomes more painful than stepping into the unknown. You can't force that moment. You can't rush it. But you can recognize it when it arrives and actually honor it instead of talking yourself back into the same cycle one more time. So what does that moment actually look like when it arrives? It's quieter than you'd expect. There's no dramatic revelation, no lightning bolt, just a deep, bone-level exhaustion with your own excuses. You stop believing your own rationalizations. The stories you've been telling yourself about why you're staying, why you're waiting, why this time will be different, suddenly sound hollow. You hear yourself making the same justifications you made 6 months ago, and something inside you just goes still. That's the moment, when the internal argument finally ends. When you're no longer debating whether you should stay or go because you already know. The knowing was always there. You were just waiting for permission to act on it. Here's what Archangel Michael wants you to understand about that knowing. It doesn't come from your head. Your mind will keep you trapped forever because it's designed to keep you safe, not free. The mind wants certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants to know exactly what happens next before it lets you move. But that's not how transformation works. You don't get the blueprint before you make the jump. You make the jump and the path appears. That knowing comes from somewhere deeper, from your body, from your gut, from that quiet voice that's been whispering the truth while your mind was busy arguing with it. The voice that's been saying this isn't right. This doesn't feel good. This isn't what I signed up for. You've been overriding it, explaining it away, convincing yourself it's just fear or insecurity or self-sabotage. But what if it's not? What if it's actually the most intelligent part of you, trying to guide you out of something that's slowly eroding your spirit? Your body knows before your mind catches up. It knows through tension, through that heaviness in your chest when their name appears on your phone, through the way you brace yourself before seeing them, through the exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. That's not anxiety. That's not you being dramatic. That's information. Your nervous system is sending you data about what's actually happening versus the story you're telling yourself about what's happening. And here's the part that's hard to accept. Sometimes the person isn't even doing anything obviously wrong. They're not cheating. They're not cruel. They're just not right. And that's enough. You don't need to build a case. You don't need evidence that would hold up in court. You need to trust that if something feels off, it is off. Even if you can't articulate exactly why. Even if everyone around you thinks they're great. Even if on paper it makes perfect sense. Your soul doesn't operate on paper. It operates on resonance. And when something's out of alignment, you feel it. The question is whether you're willing to honor what you feel, even when it doesn't make logical sense. Because walking away from something that looks good but feels wrong is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Everyone will question it, including you. You'll wonder if you made a mistake, if you were too picky, if you let something good go because of some vague feeling you couldn't even explain. But years from now, you'll look back and understand. You'll see why it had to end. You'll see what you couldn't see then. You'll recognize that the feeling wasn't vague at all. It was clarity. It was your soul protecting you from a life that looked right, but would have slowly suffocated you. And here's what else you'll see. The space you created by leaving is what allowed the right thing to enter. Not immediately, not as a reward for leaving, but because you finally stopped blocking your own path. You stopped investing energy into something that required constant effort to maintain. You stopped trying to make something work that was never meant to. You freed yourself, and in that freedom, your energy shifted. You stopped vibrating at the frequency of trying to fix something broken. You started vibrating at the frequency of someone who knows their worth, who trusts their intuition, who's no longer available for situations that require them to abandon themselves. That shift changes everything. Not because you're doing anything to attract differently, because you are different. The version of you that tolerated breadcrumbs is gone. The version that made excuses for inconsistency doesn't exist anymore. The version that stayed hoping someone would change has learned that the only person you can change is yourself. When you embody that, when it's not just a concept but an actual lived reality, you become unavailable for the old patterns, physically unavailable. You can't even engage with it anymore because something in you has fundamentally shifted. You see the red flags immediately. You feel the misalignment instantly. And instead of overriding it and trying harder, you simply step back. Not from a place of bitterness, from a place of clarity. This is where your soulmate connection actually becomes possible. Not before. Not while you're still trying to make something work with the wrong person. Not while you're still energetically entangled with old connections. But here, in this space of absolute clarity about what you will and won't accept. Because your soulmate isn't coming to complete you. They're coming to meet you. As you are. Whole. Clear. No longer looking for someone to fill a void or fix what's broken. Looking for partnership. For resonance. For someone who matches the frequency you've cultivated through all this work. And they can't match a frequency you haven't stabilized yet. If you're still oscillating between knowing your worth and questioning it, you'll attract someone who oscillates between seeing you and overlooking you. If you're still unclear about your boundaries, you'll attract someone who tests them. If you're still healing wounds through relationships instead of outside of them, you'll attract someone who triggers those wounds constantly. This isn't punishment, it's precision. The universe matches your actual frequency, not your desired frequency, not what you say you want, what you actually are. So the work isn't about attracting your soulmate. It's about becoming the version of yourself who's ready for that level of connection. Who can actually handle it? Because here's what nobody tells you about soulmate connections. They're not easier, they're deeper. They require a level of honesty and vulnerability that will terrify you if you're not ready. They ask you to show up fully, to communicate clearly, to stay present through discomfort, to not run when things get real. If you're still running from yourself, you'll run from them too. If you're still hiding parts of yourself you think are unacceptable, you'll hide from them. If you're still performing to be loved, you'll perform in that relationship too. And then it won't be a soulmate connection anymore. It'll be another version of the same pattern, wearing a different face. That's why this preparation phase matters so much. Not because you need to be perfect, because you need to be real. You need to have done enough of your own work that you're not looking for someone to do it for you. You need to have established a relationship with yourself that's stable enough that another person's presence enhances it, but doesn't define it. You need to know who you are when you're alone, so you don't lose yourself when you're together. This is the part where most people get impatient. They understand the concept. They've done some healing. They've set some boundaries, and now they're ready. They want the relationship to show up. They want confirmation that all this work meant something. But there's a difference between understanding something intellectually and integrating it cellularly. Between knowing you deserve better and actually being unable to tolerate less. That gap is where most people get stuck. They've learned the lessons in theory, but they haven't lived them long enough for the new patterns to become automatic. So when someone shows up who triggers the old pattern, they slip back into it before they even realize what's happening. The familiarity overrides the new awareness. This is why you need time. Not because the universe is withholding, because integration takes time, because new neural pathways need repetition to become default, because you need to practice choosing differently enough times that it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like who you are. You need to disappoint people and survive it. You need to be alone and discover it's not as terrifying as you thought. You need to say no without explaining yourself and watch the sky not fall. You need to take up space without apologizing and realize the right people don't need you small. Every single one of those experiences is building something. A new baseline, a new normal, a new version of you that operates from a completely different set of principles than the old version did. And that version of you, that's who your soulmate is waiting for. Not waiting for you to arrive, waiting for you to become. Because they're not coming to save you from yourself. They're coming to meet you where you actually are. And if where you are is still unhealed, still running, still performing, that's who they'll meet. And it won't work. Not because they're wrong, because the timing is. So what does this actually look like in practice? How do you know when you're ready versus when you're just tired of waiting? Here's the difference. When you're tired of waiting, you're focused on the absence. You notice every couple, every engagement announcement, every reminder that you're still alone. You feel behind. You feel forgotten. You start questioning whether you did something wrong or if the universe is punishing you. That's resistance. That's still being at war with what is. When you're actually ready, there's peace. Not because you've given up, because you've arrived. You're living a life that feels full even though that piece is missing. You have friendships that nourish you, work that engages you, hobbies that light you up, a relationship with yourself that's honest and kind. You're not waiting for someone to make your life start. Your life has already started, and you're building something beautiful that someone else will eventually get to join. That's the energy that calls in healthy love, not desperate seeking, grounded presence, not performing worthiness, embodied self-respect, not chasing validation, offering partnership. You see the shift? When you're ready, you're not trying to get something you don't have. You're sharing something you've already built. And that changes everything about who shows up and how it unfolds. Because people who are also grounded recognize that energy. People who've done their work are drawn to it. Suddenly you're not attracting fixers or projects or people who need you to be small so they can feel big. You're attracting equals. People who've also walked through their darkness and come out the other side. People who know themselves, who can communicate, who understand that love is a practice, not a feeling. Those people don't show up when you're performing. They show up when you're real. So if you're in this preparation phase and it feels endless, understand what's actually happening. You're not being delayed. You're being refined. Every disappointment is teaching you what you actually want versus what you thought you wanted. Every boundary you set is strengthening your ability to maintain them in relationship. Every moment you choose yourself is rewiring decades of conditioning that told you not to. This isn't wasted time. This is the most important work you'll ever do, because the quality of your relationship with yourself determines the quality of every other relationship you'll ever have. If that foundation is shaky, everything built on it will be unstable. But if that foundation is solid, what you build on it can withstand anything. And your soulmate isn't coming to be your foundation. They're coming to build with you. Two people with solid foundations, creating something neither could have built alone. That's what you're preparing for, not someone to complete you, someone to complement what you've already created. There's another layer to this that most people miss. The preparation isn't just about you becoming ready. It's about life rearranging itself to create the conditions for that meeting to happen. Because soulmate connections don't happen in a vacuum. They happen when two people's paths cross at exactly the right moment, when both people are in the right place physically, emotionally, spiritually, when the timing aligns in a way that allows the connection to actually develop. Think about it. If you'd met them 5 years ago, would it have worked? Probably not. You weren't who you are now. They weren't who they are now. The circumstances weren't right. One or both of you were still in old patterns, still attached to relationships that needed to end, still living in places you needed to leave, still working jobs that weren't aligned. The you from 5 years ago couldn't have recognized them, couldn't have been ready for what they'd bring, couldn't have handled the depth of what that connection requires. So the universe wasn't keeping you apart. It was giving you both time to become who you needed to be, to go through what you needed to go through, to learn what you needed to learn, so that when you finally meet, you're both ready, not perfect, ready. There's a massive difference. And all these experiences you're having right now, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones, they're part of that becoming. The relationship that breaks your heart is teaching you what you won't tolerate next time. The friendship that betrays you is showing you what loyalty actually looks like. The job that drains you is clarifying what you actually value. None of it is random. All of it is preparation. And somewhere your person is going through their version of this too, having their heart broken, learning their lessons, becoming who they need to be to meet you. You're both in process, both being refined, both moving toward a collision point that neither of you can see yet, but that's already been set in motion. That's why you can't force it, why you can't rush it, why trying to make it happen before it's time only creates more pain. Because the preparation has to be complete, not perfect, complete. You have to have walked through enough darkness that you appreciate the light. You have to have been hurt enough that you value kindness. You have to have been alone enough that you know the difference between loneliness and solitude. Your person needs the same. And until you've both reached that point, the meeting won't serve what it's meant to create. So what do you do while you wait? You stop waiting. You start living. Fully. Presently. With intention. You build the life you want to live. Not the life you think will attract someone. The life that makes you excited to wake up. You invest in friendships. You pursue passions. You take risks. You travel if that calls you. You create if that moves you. You rest if that heals you. You do whatever makes you feel alive. Because that aliveness is what magnetizes the right person. Not your availability, not your loneliness, not your readiness to settle, your aliveness, your joy, your presence, your full engagement with your actual life. That energy is unmistakable, and it cuts through all the noise and pee, performance and desperation that usually clutters the dating space. When someone who's truly alive meets someone else who's truly alive, they recognize each other immediately, not because of what they say or how they look, because of how they feel, because there's a resonance that happens when two people who've done their work encounter each other. A recognition that goes beyond logic, beyond explanation. You just know. And when that knowing happens, everything shifts. the connection develops differently. Faster in some ways, slower in others. There's less game playing because both people are past that. Less uncertainty because the recognition is mutual. Less fear because both people have already faced their demons alone. What emerges isn't perfect, it's real. It's two people who see each other clearly and choose each other anyway. Who understand that love isn't about finding someone who never triggers you. It's about finding someone worth working through the triggers with. Someone who'll stay in the hard conversations, who'll repair when things break, who'll grow with you instead of demanding you stay small. That's what all this preparation is creating space for. Not a fairy tale. A real partnership between two whole people. So if you're in the waiting phase, reframe what you think is happening. You're not waiting. You're becoming. Every day you choose yourself, you're becoming more of who you need to be. Every boundary you set, you're becoming clearer on what you require. Every moment you sit with discomfort instead of running, you're becoming more capable of the depth that's coming. Your soulmate doesn't need you to be perfect. They need you to be ready. Ready to be seen. Ready to be honest. Ready to stay when it gets hard. Ready to build something real. And you can't fake that readiness. You can't perform your way into it. You have to earn it through lived experience, through choosing differently enough times that it becomes who you are. That's the work. That's the wait. And when it's complete, when you've become who you needed to become, the meeting happens naturally. Not because you manifested it, because you're finally frequency matched, because you're finally vibrating at the level where that connection can exist. And then everything you went through to get there makes perfect sense. You're not manifesting wrong. You're manifesting exactly what you're ready for. And right now, you're ready for the last person who taught you what you won't accept anymore. The person after that, they'll teach you something else. Each one is closer to what you actually want, because each one is reflecting a version of you that's evolving. But here's what happens when you finally get it. When you stop seeing these patterns as failures and start seeing them as mirrors. When you stop asking why this keeps happening and start asking what it's showing you, everything changes. Not gradually. Suddenly, you'll be going through your normal life, doing the work, setting boundaries, choosing yourself. And then one day you'll notice something. That person who used to trigger you, nothing. That behavior that used to send you spiraling, you barely register it. That pattern you kept falling into, you can't even imagine engaging with it anymore. That's not growth you manufactured. That's cellular integration. You've become someone different at the frequency level. Your nervous system has recalibrated. Your baseline has shifted. And when your baseline shifts, your reality has to shift with it. This is what Archangel Michael wanted you to understand from the beginning. The wrong person keeps showing up because you're still energetically matched to them, not as punishment, as feedback. The universe is showing you what frequency you're broadcasting by showing you who responds to it. Every person who wasn't right was showing you what you're still healing. Every connection that didn't work was revealing what you haven't integrated yet. Every painful pattern was offering you information about where your work is. And the moment you do that work, genuinely do it, not perform it or think about it, but actually integrate it, those people disappear from your field. They have to, because you're no longer a frequency match. You're not rejecting them or avoiding them or building walls. You've simply outgrown the resonance. Your energy no longer calls them in. That's when your soulmate can actually reach you, not because you've earned them or manifested them or waited long enough, because you've cleared the interference. You've removed the static. You've become the signal you've been trying to send. And they've been looking for that signal the whole time, moving through their own patterns, learning their own lessons, becoming their own version of ready. You've both been in process, both being refined, both walking toward a meeting point that's been set since before you knew what you were looking for. The preparation isn't keeping you apart. It's making the meeting possible. Because if you met before you were ready, you'd miss each other. You'd mistake them for another lesson, another pattern, another person who seemed right but wasn't. But when you're ready, actually ready, you won't miss them. You'll recognize them immediately. Not because they'll be perfect, because they'll be real. And you'll finally be ready for real. That's what's waiting on the other side of this pattern. Not someone who completes you, someone who meets you as you are, whole, clear, finally available for the connection you've been preparing for all along. So stop asking when. Start asking who you need to become. Because the answer to that question is the answer to everything else. Your soulmate isn't coming when you're ready. They're coming when you become. And you're becoming right now. Every choice, every boundary, every moment you choose yourself instead of the pattern. You're not waiting for your soulmate. You're becoming the person they're already looking for.